It was a day when the American president came to Augusta. Everyone turned out. The crowd was exuberant. The newspaper coverage was outstanding. And that president had such a good time, he came back a few weeks later. It wasn't George Washington. It wasn't Dwight Eisenhower. It wasn't even Bill Clinton. Would you believe Millar Fillmore? Our public perception is that Millar Fillmore was one of the most uncelebrated chief executives to have ever suffered the White House. The unlucky 13th president of our United States is rarely remembered for anything other than his funny-sounding name and funny-sounding political party, the Whigs. His main claim to political fame seems to be that he was the last president who was neither a Democrat or Republican. Fillmore also tarnished his chances for positive posterity because he took up with the even more oddly named Know Nothing movement before leaving public life. We know all that because his history has been written. But history also has its moments, and so did Millar Fillmore. When he came to Augusta, it was April 1854. It was a really big deal, hoopla and whoopla. Augusta's civic leaders couldn't have been happier to show off for a former president. They planned a huge reception, a parade, and speeches. Bad weather, Fillmore's luck, dampened festivities, but through it all, the 13th president performed wonderfully. The Chronicle said so, although a reporter complained in print to not being able to hear everything being exhorted. He heard enough to find Fillmore's speech a winner. The former president praised Augusta. He stood in front of the Signers Monument and praised that. Augusta was smitten. Rarely is seen any public man who was so successful in making a most favorable impression upon all with whom he came in contact, wrote the Chronicle on May 2nd. Then guess what? A week later, Fillmore came back. A story in the Chronicle on May 9th says he was passing back through town on his way to Columbia. A smaller group met him this time, but was just as impressed, and he was sent on his way with the city's good wishes. More than 160 years later, historians are growing more sympathetic. They point out Fillmore worked well with Congress on the famous Compromise of 1850, preserving the Union for at least another decade. His foreign policy was surprisingly successful, particularly in opening Japan for trade. He also seems to have generally behaved himself until his death in 1874, leaving the worries of the world to those elected to solve them. History brings perspective, but perspective tells us that Millar Fillmore probably played the bad hand he was dealt as well as he could. That's the message of time. Sometimes, like that old Chronicle reporter in 1854, we just have trouble hearing it.